Summer League starts today for the Chicago Bulls, and we're going to talk about the things to look out for as the Chicago Bulls start Summer League. We're also going to ask a question: have the Chicago Bulls repeated a mistake by giving Patrick Williams the long-term deal that they did? All that plus the mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so I want to start it off with Patrick Williams' deal. There's been some concern raised that have the Bulls repeated a mistake by giving a long-term big contract extension to another player that has proved to have injuries over the course of his NBA career. While I personally don't believe in the injury-prone title for Patrick Williams because I think he's had two really big freak injuries, other than that, he's been an extremely healthy player. But the fact is, he's 4 years into his career. He's had 2 years of extreme good health, and then 2 years of his season being shortened by injury. So even while I don't look at it as being career prone because it's nothing chronic or anything that has shaped up to be that as of yet, this new injury from Patrick Williams is something that normal people take maybe even upwards of 2 years to heal from. So in the 5-year, $90 million deal, well, I don't think the money of it is going to be something that people, that's something that is going to be a huge burden to the Chicago Bulls. It becomes less of the cap as that goes down as the years go on because it's a flat contract. And when you're looking at role players consistently signing over $100 million deals now, it really comes down to the question of can Patrick Williams live up to what he needs to be for this deal? The fifth overall pick, the fourth overall pick, that is gone now, right? That moniker on him is gone. For my personal, everybody can have their own ones. I'm no longer looking at Patrick Williams as what you expect or want or to see a fourth overall pick. I'm now looking at Patrick Williams as how does he refine what he's already shown to be solid at? Does he become a more consistent offensive threat with his three-point shooting, with his ability to get to the rim at times? Do we see that be more consistent? Does the defense continue to take steps forward if he can stay healthy? And because those are the questions that I'm looking at, I think that Patrick Williams is going to be fine over the course of this contract if the injuries don't continue to be a thing. And while he's had two with the wrist and the foot freak injuries that have really shortened his career, fact of the matter is that that's still a concern. 17 games in year 2, 43 games in year 4. Other than that, he's played basically over 90% of the games when you take those 2 seasons out, but you still have to look at that. So, there is a risk, and especially for the Bulls and the history that we've had of injury-riddled players, it's fair enough to ask that question when it comes to Patrick Williams and the future going on there. But it all comes down to the deal's now given, right? So the only thing to do is go on the court and prove it, and to prove that it's not a mistake, to prove that he's not going to be injury-prone throughout this 5-year deal. The Bulls gave him this deal at 22 years old because they still believe that there is a lot to uncover with Patrick Williams. And the thing that I've said that I will say now is the fact that with Patrick Williams getting this time, with DeMar DeRozan now gone, and somebody having to step up and take those shots. Yes, Zach LaVine is still on the team. Vooch is still on the team, but you're still losing somebody who got almost 19, 20 shots per game in DeMar DeRozan. How much of that does Patrick Williams step up and take a larger role into that? Last year, taking eight shots per game, which is tied for the most in his career. Even if I'm not expecting him to take all those shots that DeMar is leaving on the board, because Kobe's going to be a bigger part of the offense as well. But Patrick Williams needs to show that he's ready to step into that to a degree and be a much more consistent and aggressive and focused offensive player as well. And we'll see it from Patrick Williams. Overall, I still don't look at the deal as this huge negative. It is a deal that I think he's either going to exceed and make it look like a bargain deal by the end of it, or we're going to look back and say, dang, Patrick Williams got paid and didn't really progress much. But I don't think it's going to be this albatross where it's just this huge deal that's holding the Bulls back from making any type of moves or even other things. Just got to see what's going to come down to with that. With that said as well, we got Summer League coming up, and I want to talk about the things that I'm looking for the most in Summer League. And you guys can let me know as well down below how you feel. The first one is Matas Buzelis. Matas coming into this team at the 11th overall pick, there's a lot of hype around him. And I've said it before. There are going to be Bulls fans that write whole creative think pieces based off this run for Matas Buzelis, whether, oh my God, he only had 5 points. How we wasted another pick, right? There's going to be that, especially with a player like Terrence Shannon Jr. already like really looking good in Summer League. Khalil Ware, those type of players. To Johnson, I don't think we've seen him in Summer League yet, or maybe I'm mistaken on that. But Buzelis and how does he look is going to be an important part, especially when he talks about wanting to win, wanting to make the right plays to win, getting better as a player. Buzelis got better every month of that G League season that went on. Every single month he got better. And you want to see that continued development. Buzelis should come into the Summer League, hopefully, and look like he belongs. And even then, I'm telling you guys now, good, great, or indifferent, or bad, I should say. Either way, it's not that deep. It's Summer League. Derrick Rose didn't have a great Summer League, right? He didn't. Denzel Valentine had an amazing Summer League, right? Doug McDermott had a really good Summer League as well. I even think Tony Snell in one of those in one of those Summer League runs, maybe it was the championship run, maybe it was the year after, had a really good Summer League. So it's a lot that you can. I more so look at the aggression level, what they're trying to do, how they move around the court. That's what I'm looking at more so than if Buzelis scores 20 points in a Summer League game, right? So Buzelis is definitely probably the most thing I'm excited about. But then as well, Julian Phillips. Julian Phillips is somebody who, in his G League play last year, showed that he was above that level of competition. Now, in the NBA in his play, he was, as a rookie, what usually looks, right? He didn't always look like he understood where to be at times. I think he was far advanced than what Dalen Terry was, for example, in his rookie year. But by the end of that, you saw a player in Julian Phillips that you could at least see be an energy guy, be a transition guy who could make the right plays, who understood, kind of defensively things, right? And so does Julian Phillips take a next step, especially after a season ended with injury? Does he take a further step for the Chicago Bulls? Those are things that we're looking at as well. Julian Phillips is definitely a player that I want to see come into Summer League and really look like somebody who has had a year of NBA play is basically what I'd say there. And then next up, Adama Sanogo. Listen, Adama Sanogo to me, it sucks that he's on another two-way deal. I understand why they went out and got Jalen Smith. No knocks there at all. But Adama Sanogo was somebody that by probably a month into that G League season, if even there, he showed you how much he grew. He showed all of that. And so, I expect Adama Sanogo to look dominant here in G League. He is the player that I expect to look like that. That's if they play him a lot of minutes. We'll see how much they go to him offensively. They could go to a lot of the guards, things like that. But I do think that Adama Sanogo should, as a big, considering how his season ended for the G League, he has more than enough reason to come into this G League, look like a really good big man, and show that he's taking that next step in his progression as well. I hope that Adama continues to show he's above the G League level of competition. So the Bulls realize you got to give this guy a shot at the NBA level. And I get it. It's year 2. He's an undrafted free agent. You may want to see, hey, was it a fluke? Things like that. But like at some point, if this Bulls team is going younger, you have to try your young talent in the NBA to see what they can bring. And you may have a player that ends up being a career backup in Adama Sanogo, but that's fine. You got him as an undrafted rookie, but he showed so much both defensively and offensively, specifically rebounding. The same amount of offensive and defensive rebounds, block shots, right? These are all things that the Bulls could use at that next level. So let's hope that Adama Sanogo shows that. And then the two dark horses to me, as far as players that are competing for that final two-way spot, and that's Henry Drell and Marcus Domas. These are very similar players as far as the position that they play. I think Domas isn't the three-point shooter that Henry Drell is, but he still is a scorer that can fill it up, that can pass. He can very well fit into a lot of offenses. And I think that the Bulls getting him as an undrafted free agent after this draft is somebody that you want to bring into your G League system to eventually see if they can turn into a back end of the bench guy, a role player for you at the NBA level. But, these two guys I think are going to compete for that final two-way spot in this and in training camp. I do expect them to both to be at training camp for the Chicago Bulls before the Bulls make that ultimate decision. But those are my thoughts on Summer League and who I'm looking for. I'm sure there'll be some players that we're surprised by and things that aren't on this list. But you guys can let me know who you guys are looking forward to in this Summer League play. And then lastly, before we get into the mailbag, the Bulls have been announced for the NBA Cup that they're going to be in Group C with the Celtics, Cavs, Hawks, and Wizards. Now, this is an interesting group, especially when you have the Celtics and Cavs, two teams that are going to be towards the top of that Eastern Conference. And then you have teams that are trying to figure it out. The Hawks, who had the number 1 overall pick in Zachary Richer. They also moved DeJounte Murray and see how that makeup of that team is going to be, how Trae Young is going to operate that. And then you have the Wizards, who got Alexander Sarr as well. So the Bulls are going to be competing with two teams that are going to be towards the top of the Eastern Conference. And then the number 1 and number 2 overall pick, one of those players in Richer that Matas Busilis has already said doesn't want to, Zachary Richer doesn't want to see him on the court. So I think this is going to be a fun group play. I'm still not over the top, like excited about the NBA Cup or in-season tournament, but we'll see what comes about it. But the Bulls are in that group, and we'll see what comes about from that. But all right, y'all, let's go ahead and get into these mailbags for today. This one's from Larry.
What up, man? This is Larry calling in. I'm glad that Bulls were able to get something out of DeMar DeRozan leaving, which is the right decision not to re-sign him. Glad that they were able to get at least a couple of picks out of it. Maybe we can use that to move Levine, which it looks like it's going to go into the season now. I mean, the draft is passed, beginning of free agency passed, teams having cap space to absorb a lot of his money. Looks like he's going to go into the season, and it looks like it's going to take something to get him to be moved. I'm just looking at it, seeing if there may be a Detroit deal. If Tobias Harris is awful, then we're just going to have to take back a bad deal. It's looking like that, but having him start the season and having to play him to rebuild his value, that's going to be 30 minutes that he's going to have to get to rebuild his value. But that's going to be a difficult situation for everybody involved. But hopefully it works out where we can get him onto another destination. And I was thinking about kind of a random deal is that Patrick Williams seems like he's basically Jeff Green, a big forward that can shoot threes, sees flashes, and he's gonna play for a long time. I mean, he's already guaranteed to be paid 9 years, and he'll still only be 28, 27. Good locker room guy. It looks like he's just gonna be Jeff Green going forward, which is okay, but Jeff Green looks like who Patrick Williams is. But hopefully we're able to keep our pick. But either way, I'm looking forward to new things once Zach LaVine is gone, and hopefully it doesn't take until the trade deadline. All right, appreciate it.
I do think that Zach LaVine is going to be a Bull going into the season. I at this point, I think the writing's on the wall for that personally. Maybe the Bulls do pull out something last minute. I don't think so. But so I'm definitely excited. I definitely expect Zach LaVine to be a Bull next season to start it off, and we'll see if he finishes the next season as a Chicago Bull. As far as Patrick Williams, I think at 22 years old, it's too early to say who he's going to be for the rest of his career, personally, right? That's just my personal thing. That's not something that I do, even at him going into being 23. I do think you're right, though, as at minimum, his floor is a player that's going to stick around the NBA for years and years to come as a role player, maybe more than that if he ends up developing some more, right? But I do think that as a defensive player, solid defensive player that can hit the three ball well, and if you're playing in a more up-tempo offense, he can maybe even, do some ball handling and things for you. Patrick Williams is going to be in the league for a long time. Now, we know he's probably going to be a Bull for 5 more years, at least on this contract, but I think at minimum, P. Will is going to be a player that sticks around for a while. And for one, that's solid. You want pieces. Every team has pieces like that. It's just, of course, Bulls fans, we were the ones that drafted him 4th overall. And so, there's that carries that disappointment there. But let's see what Patrick Williams turns into. I'm not ready to say for sure exactly who Patrick Williams is going to be for the rest of his career, but he is getting to that point where at some point you just got to stop talking about potential and talk about who that player actually is. So I understand that point as well, Larry. All right, let's get into this next voicemail. This one's from Oscar.
What's up, Haize? Oscar here, man. 2 things. One, do you think this far along in the off season and all these signings and everything that Zach more than likely is going to be back with the Bulls? And what are your thoughts about, let's say he buys into the program and he's showing that he's a good team player or whatever it is. Is there do you think there will be a possibility, because, you never know with injuries, how that changes the landscape and, teams' necessities. Maybe him and Troy Craig, a wing defender and then a scorer, the Bulls somehow are able to get a package and move him at the deadline, if you think that's even possible. Maybe they have to add in the 2 second-round picks as a sweetener and get something back or whatever, a young player. But do you think that's possible? And number 2, I read a report that Alexis Pogacheski was released from whatever team he was on. And my question is, do you think it's worth it for the Bulls? I remember the kid was showing some flashes with OKC before Chet got there. I guess he never really developed, but the kid, he has potential. He's like 7 feet tall. He can handle. He can shoot. Do you think the Bulls should maybe try to grab that kid? Because at this point, with the whole youth movement, I feel like the Bulls should just be, courting as many, talented players or players that have a little bit of potential and throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks. Let me know your thoughts, man. Thank you for always, getting back at my calls and answering my crazy questions.
Shout out to Oscar, man. Oscar always leaving interesting voicemails, man. But per the last one, yeah, Zach is going to be a Bull more than likely. And you never know what's going to happen at the deadline, per what you said, whether it's injuries, a team being better than they thought, or maybe a team has a piece that then they want to move off that they thought was going to take a step, and maybe they're looking to move off of that and maybe bring in Zach LaVine because you know what he's going to do. So there's a lot of options for the Bulls at the deadline potentially, right? Now, that doesn't always mean that it's going to turn into that. The Bulls also thought they'd have options at the deadline, this past trade deadline for Zach LaVine. So, we'll see what materializes there. But yeah, there's that chance, especially if Zach LaVine comes in, he plays well, and, isn't the part where people look at and say, hey, they're lost this game because of Zach LaVine. I do think that there are going to be teams that could. I'm not saying for sure that could bite because some things don't change with Zach. The injury history is still going to be there, regardless if he's healthy up until the trade deadline, and the contract is still going to be the same, even though, of course, by the trade deadline, most of that for that season's paid. You're then looking at 2 more years of a Zach LaVine deal, so that's what it comes down to. Now, as far as Poku, I understand what you're getting at, especially with the Bulls being younger, but I think we have a lot of young forwards here that we're still trying to see what they're going to turn into, right? So we got Julian Phillips, we got Dalen Terry, we got Patrick Williams, and while I wouldn't hate if the Bulls brought in Poku, our roster's also full, so that would mean like waiving Ernalot Batim to bring in a Poku or hoping that you create another roster spot because of other moves. But I think Poku's going to have his fair share of suitors because he is a young player that has showed some things, hasn't necessarily progressed, but then again, he was on that Thunder team that had Chet. He moved over to the Charlotte Hornets, whatever happened there. And so, again, I don't think that is going to happen. I won't say that I feel that a Poku move is likely, but I wouldn't hate it if they look just to bring in and see what they can get out of it, right? And maybe it ends up being a G League deal. We'll see. All right, let's get into this next one. This one's from Marco.
Hey, how you doing, man? This is Marco Dean. I just want to give people just one insight on the Bulls. The fact that we want to trade Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, and maybe even Lonzo Ball is not a problem. We understand that. But I think people are putting the cart before the horse. Sometimes you want a little bit of return on your investment. We invested in these guys. These are 2 guys, Lonzo Ball and Zach LaVine, who hasn't even played for us. And we have given them the biggest contracts of their careers. And you're telling me we should be excited in the prospect of trading them? First of all, anybody knows that Zach LaVine's best year, best offensive output was with a rebounding point guard in Lonzo Ball. Now he has a rebounding point guard in Josh Giddey. I think we need to go ahead, settle down, go into the season, and by the trade deadline, depending on how we vibe as a team, and depending on what other needs we have, that's when you can look forward to trading those assets. Hey, man, that's just how I feel, Haize. I appreciate you, man. Sometimes don't like the takes, but I love your content, man. Stick with it. More power to you.
I get what you're getting at, Marco, for sure, right? And I get what you're saying in the fact that don't overlook Zach LaVine increasing his trade value. But here's the thing. You don't usually get as much at the trade deadline as you get in the offseason, especially for a player that already had doubt around him, but you never know, right? I'm not saying that. But then also you said that next to a rebounding point guard, I think we need to be clear here. Zach LaVine's, he was so efficient playing next to Lonzo Ball, not because Lonzo was a rebounding point guard, but because of Lonzo's defensive IQ, his offensive IQ, how Lonzo Ball communicated on that defensive side of the ball that helped a low IQ defensive player like Zach LaVine understand what the team is trying to do because you have Lonzo Ball calling it out and communicating to his teammates. So Lonzo is such a unique player. Also the fact that Lonzo didn't operate the ball a lot in the half court and was able to move around more, hit the three-point shot at the rate that he did. So there was a lot that allowed Zach LaVine to be his best version of himself next to Lonzo Ball because of Lonzo's threat to stretch the floor, which gave Zach LaVine more lanes to attack the rim or finish in the mid-range like he can do. So it's not just about you got Josh Giddey now. He's a rebounding point guard. All of a sudden that's going to put Zach back in that place. But it will be interesting to see how a playmaker like Josh Giddey does operate with LaVine and Kobe White more than likely on the floor at the same time. We'll see what that brings about. I think that'll be fun to see. All right, let's get into this next one. This one's from Todd.
Haize, what's up, man? It's Todd. Hope you're well. Leaving this message after we essentially have found out, or not found out, but we have our locked roster. So now we can really assess. So I wanted to pose a question, man. Obviously the concern being holding on to that pick for 2025. So I'm actually excited, man, because I think there's no way to lose this season. We have two directions. Either we do lose and we hold that pick, which, as you know, is my goal, or we don't lose, which means 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 of our young core has taken a step. So that means Kobe's gotten better potentially. Ayo's gotten better potentially. P. Will finally shows up, or Mattis or somebody else comes in and actually makes a difference that keeps us either at the place we were, now that we don't have DeMar, we don't have Caruso, and we still are winning to the point where we're a 10th or 9th seed and we're competing for the play-in. But that means that one of our players, even with Zach and Vooch still here, has stepped up. So my question to you is, what do you prefer? Do you want one of our young core to take that step, or multiple of our young core to take that step to the point with which we are now competing, but competing with those young core in place? Or do we tank or whatever, rebuild, whatever terminology you want to use, and keep that top 10 pick? I'm not thinking we're going to be in that Cooper flag race, but obviously you already know I'm good with Common Maluash. I'm great with Ace Bailey and so forth. VJ Edgecombe, give me any of them. But the fact is that what do you prefer? Do you prefer that first direction or first door? Young player steps up, keeps us in the place in which we were, or we keep the pick and we move forward with a potential star? Would love to hear your thoughts. I've got mine, but want to hear what you think. Thanks, brother. Talk soon.
I think this is a fair view. Like I said in my video yesterday, the Bulls are rebuilding. They're not necessarily tanking. And at the winning 35 games as a young team that's developing is a lot better of an outlook than winning 39 games as a veteran team that has aging vets who, are supposed to be the peak of their career. So I agree with that. Now, as far as your question on which one would I rather see, I don't care. Whatever gets the Bulls back to being relevant and building a sustainable winning team. That's what I care about. If the young guys step up and we miss out on a top 10 pick because they step up and they're that good that we're outside of that range, and we finally see Patrick Williams is looking like the player we want him to be. Kobe's taking another step. Julian Phillips is taking a step up. Matas Bucilis is who we want him to be. Josh Giddey is taking a step, right? If those things happen, I'm just as fine as if we get a top 5 pick. Hell, maybe we can get both done. But with that said, I don't care. I don't have a specific route. The thing that I want most for my team is my team to win. And if we can, whatever gets us to that place of building a sustainable winning team that is growing rather than getting worse every year, that's what I want. Do I look at the talent in next year's draft and think, hey, we can use a lot, like the center from Duke that you mentioned, we could absolutely use that talent. But I'm not going to pigeonhole myself into thinking only one way is the way that I want to see the Bulls get there. I just want to see my team be able to be a winning team. I don't care how you get there. Do it sustainably, and build a team that can compete, truly compete. That's my overall thought. But great voicemail, Todd. Let's get into this last voicemail. This one's from Mello.
Yo, what up, Haize? This is Mello. Just a couple of things. First on the DeMar trade, you know what I'm saying? DeMar was a beast when he was with the Bulls. It sucks that, things happened the way they did with Lonzo, because I think him, Zoe, Zach, I think it could have been something good. But as far as that trade went, I guess they got what they could for him, seeing as how he could have just left and they got nothing. But I heard you talking about the Duarte kid. Now, as far as him, with Zach still being on the team, honestly, in my opinion, I think him coming off the bench, the only other guard on the bench that's actually better than him is Ayo. And if you put him and Ayo coming off the bench together right now as the roster stands with Zach still being there, it'll be him and Ayo in the backcourt.
coming off the bench, which would actually kind of be good because the dude likes to get out and run. And, that's what Io does. So that'd be a nice little backcourt of them two coming off the bench, with the rookie, and Smith. And I think we still got Torrey Craig. I think he decided to come back, so yeah, Torrey Craig too. But that wouldn't be bad. And also about this whole thing with Boots for Walker Kessler. I like the Walker Kessler kid, but I think he's up for contract either after this upcoming season or next. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. But right now, I think they've made decent moves to be in position to stay in the top 10, next year, to make sure they keep that pick, because that's going to be key. So imagine if they get a top 5 pick in the draft next year. That'll be special. So that'll be everything they've done this season. Well, this all season will actually be good going into next season if we could get a top 5 pick. But let me know what you think, bro.
I said it before. I don't necessarily see Chris Duarte getting a bunch of minutes. I get what you're saying, that he's the first guard off the bench, but you also got to think about the fact Zach LaVine's going to play some minutes at the guard. Is he probably going to have to start at small forward if he's on this roster by opening day? Yeah, but you're still going to run some lineups with him at the small forward position and at the shooting guard position. So you're looking at Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Ayo Dosunmu, all getting minutes at that guard position. Now, Chris Duarte can get in there depending on what type of matchups the Chicago Bulls team wants to run. I'm not saying that he can't, but it's not as straightforward. And even as the fourth guard on that team, he may not get a whole hell of a lot of minutes. So we got to see what's going to come about for the Chicago Bulls. Also, how Dalen Terry factors into that. That's one player that you didn't mention. How the Bulls want their 22-year-old Dalen Terry. What position does he play, right? How much of a step does he show? They're actually invested into his future as well. So I think those things play a part. But we'll see what Duarte does. If he brings it in training camp and earns a spot, he earns a spot. That's what I hope is going to happen for everybody. Like, at the end of the day, if you bring it and earn your role, earn your spot, cool. Let's see if he can do it. Now, as far as the Bulls keeping the pick, we'll see, man. We'll see. I mean, I think that my personal view on this team, that there's a really good chance they keep that pick in the top 10. Doesn't mean it's going to be top 5, but in the top 10. And I think that this is a draft that you can get talent all throughout that top 10. And so this is a very deep draft. Yeah, Cooper Flagg is, of course, rightfully so going to get the most notice. Ace Bailey right behind that. But you're still looking at other players that you can get. Isaiah Evans, right, as a wing in this, also going to be on that Duke. That Duke team's going to be stacked, by the way. Asa Newell is another one that you can get in there. Cameron Carr, right? So there are a lot of players that you could still get in that top 10 range, even if you don't end up getting a top 5 pick. And that could be really good for the Chicago Bulls. So let's see what they're going to do, man. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are watching the show or following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. That's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.